looking forward to being a parish priest, you know, and I should digress just a little to tell you that I was the master of ceremonies in the seminary. Now that was a big deal, and when you think about it afterwards, it really wasn't anything, because what they did was they had auditions for the choir, and those who failed the choir, who couldn't sing, were considered for the ceremonial jobs, and I got the top one. My mother used to tell people, when God gave out musical ability, Francis hid behind the door. But anyway, I didn't hid behind the door, but I didn't have any musical ability at all. So I was the master of ceremonies, and got to know the cardinal secretary very well, because we would be called out for things like priest funerals and all that kind of stuff. And I'd get down with the seminarians, and then instead of he had a wrangle with high school or grade school kids, he got me and the so-called good boys, good men to do it. And so he knew me. And come ordination, which was in Philadelphia, in the cathedral in Philadelphia, and after ordination, my parents and I were walking across Logan Circle, and here I hear my name shouted, and here comes Monsignor McGuinn, the cardinal secretary. And he said, the cardinal would like to meet your parents. Well, of course, that ruined the day for my mother. She said, well, if he wants to meet us, it's because you're going to get a bad appointment. And I said, you know, the cardinal doesn't recognize anything as a bad appointment. You know, it's just going to be an appointment one way or the other. So we went in up to the cardinal. Well, you know, it was a big deal. People didn't meet the cardinal, you know. You know, like today when they stand outside a church and say hello, we'll never. And so the next Tuesday, we went in to get our appointments. And when I got my appointment, you know, and I was told we could all open it and then pay attention while he gave us a little spiritual talk. Well, after I opened mine, I didn't hear a word he said. Because it said to me, you are assigned to the Diocese of San Juan, Puerto Rico. Oh. I thought, what the hell? San Juan, Puerto Rico? I didn't even know where Puerto Rico was. Nobody did. You know? What am I going to Puerto Rico? Where is it? You know? Oh, I thought I'll die. Now, I should digress here. At St. Joe's Prep, you had you had the equivalent of 5 years of Latin, 3 years of Greek, 2 years of French. I go in college and I'm pre-med. So as a pre-med, I had to take German. Because all the textbooks of medicine were written in German, supposedly. And of course, with the war on, they must have burnt them all. Because by the time I got to medical school, they were in English. But anyhow, and so I had reading knowledge of these things. Now I'm going down to Puerto Rico where they speak Spanish. Great, I didn't know no Spanish. I get down to Puerto Rico, and the bishop sends the Captain McLaughlin, the Navy captain and chaplain, who was from Philadelphia. And he was chaplain, chief of chaplains for the Caribbean Sea Frontier, which doesn't exist anymore. And so he met me at the airport and took me to the bishop's house in San Juan for dinner. And we're sitting around. His house was on the, have any of you been to San Juan? Wonderful. Oh, some of you have been, all right. Well, you know, down at there's Fort Morro, El Morro Castle. Yeah. Well, at that time, that was a Navy Officers Club. And the bishop lived right near it, on a penthouse above the Chancery office. And he belonged to the Navy Officers Club for one reason only. They had retracted the so-called Spanish privilege. Now, when you and I grew up, we didn't eat meat on Fridays. Well, they had a Spanish privilege which allowed them to eat meat on Friday. And then they took it away like a year after he arrived, and all the people blamed him. His mother did it, you know, because he was an American, I should say. So anyway, we went to dinner at the Navy Officers Club. I learned how bishops have dinner. We ordered a drink, and I had a drink. And then I started looking at the menu, and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking at the menu. He said, no, we do not order till after the second drink. I said, no, this might turn out to be a very good place. I don't know that, you know. Could be, you can't tell. Then, of course, my father wore the pin. Many of you who are Irish knows what that means. You know, he was a total abstainer. Yeah. And my mother liked Manhattan, so I had a Manhattan now and then. Whenever we could get away with it. So there I am, and I'm down in a place called Santurce, And the pastor hated Americans, starting with the bishop. He was Spanish, by the way. Starting with the bishop and second me. And that meant that my room, the mosquito netting had holes in it. I was always being eaten by bugs and so on. And the climax came on a Friday, after I was only there 3 weeks. And a Friday, and the housekeeper came in, and she put a flat tin in front of his place. And he took the top off and swirled it around and opened it, and it was squid cooked in its own ink. I almost got sick to my stomach just looking at it, you know. So I excused myself, and I went out to the, and we wore cassock all the time, by the way. I like cassock. I go out, get on the bus, and go to the Navy base, and I still had, I eventually became an officer in the Navy, somewhere in there, somewhere. So I still have my officer's card, so I flashed it at the gate, got a salute, and in I went to Father McLaughlin's house. And who's there having dinner with the bishop? So we had a very lovely evening. He later died as Archbishop of Santa Fe, Jim Davis. And he said, I told him why I was there. And he said, I guess you're not too happy there. I said, oh, it's terrible, you know. And so he said, well, do something about it. Well, it got to be 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I said, Bishop, the buses stop running at midnight. I have to get out there and get home. I'll take you home, he said. Okay. So he takes me home, 12 o'clock or something like that. And he said, you have a key? I said, I have a key, but he's got the metal door locked. I don't have a key for that. That's to make sure I get in by curfew, which his curfew was 10 o'clock. And so he said, honk the horn. So he gets out in front of the car in his regalia, you know, that he was wearing, they all wear all the time down there. And I honked the horn. Poor Juan Diaz Mason, who was the pastor, almost broke his leg running down to open the door. And who was it? Not the bishop, but me. The next day I get a phone call, you're being transferred to Curacao. It means nothing to me. I'm taken up, his secretary came, picked me up, and up I went to Curacao, which is at the top of a mountain, almost midway across the island. And I get there, went, and you know, I'm introduced to the pastor in Spanish. It turns out I'm practically the only person in town who speaks English. So if there's any way to learn a language, believe me, that's it. If you can't talk to a soul, you're going to learn what they're saying. So without studying a textbook, I learned Spanish. I knew hablo español. And I help at Light of Christ. I hope Father's gone, he won't hear this. But anyway, occasionally they call and say, this started about 5 years ago. The secretary called and say, Father Jacob Monsignor would like you to take a funeral, such and such a date. I said, that's strange. Why does he want me to take a funeral? He got himself and an assistant, you know. Okay. Well, I get that. It's in Spanish. They never even alerted me, you know. So now I am the Spanish priest down there, and some 80-some years old, retired, and I'm going to have a new career, the same as the one I started with back when I was ordained in 1955. You know? And it's been a riot, I have to tell you. Now, all of this is to tell you that my entire life, I think, in the end, was influenced by devotion to the Eucharist. And it was through that devotion, if you call it that in a way, I guess it was, yes. It was through that I realized what God wanted me to do and did my best to do it. As I said to you, Puerto Rico was really something else again, especially Curacao. We didn't have Saturday Mass in those days. And the confessional was here. And there was a screen on either side, open screen, in other words. And the men came to confession by kneeling in front of me and taking the stole and putting it on their shoulders. That's the way they were. Now this is 1955, 56. Nothing, way before the Vatican Council ever introduced anything like that. The women, everybody's in line. And I'm looking at the boy, nothing in front of me. You know, I'm looking at everybody in line, and oh, Lord, it was awful, you know. And we heard confession Sunday morning starting at 7 o'clock. He had the 8 and 9, and I had the 10 and the 11. I never started my Mass before 11 or 11:30, because he just whenever he got around to it, he would go up and say yes. And I could have caught on to that attitude, you know, whenever I needed a cup of coffee, I just said, Mamatito. I went in, got a cup of coffee, came back, sat down, you know, and that was it. It was fun. But the people, you know, they thought I was, he said to me in Spanish, he said, you know, they think you're funny and walking out. I said, no, I don't think I'm so funny. But what happens is, you know, you get tired after a while. And I looked at them, I'm looking at the ball lined up for confession. And I said, yo quiere no pecados, no voy a oír sus pecados de su tío y tía y esposo. I don't wear the sins of everybody in your family. Yours will be enough. And they all laugh, and they commit a confession, and they tell me all the sins of their husband and their sister and everybody and their brother. You know? What a riot. Anyhow, that's what the Lord wanted me to do, so that's what I did. And I guess it's almost 10:30. I think that I would like, as a way to end this dissertation, or whatever you want to call it, I'd like to urge you to make the Eucharist the center of your decision making. Go to the Lord, just stop and say hello once in a while, you know. When I was in medical school, I met a young man whom I knew way back in grade school. His name was George Donahue. And he had gone, his mother had died. He came to live with an aunt in Germantown. He was there for a year or two and then went back to West Philadelphia. His father had remarried. So lo and behold, we meet in Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia. And he suggested making a visit to church at lunchtime. And I thought, that's wonderful, you know, great. So we did that. And I guess it was a month or two before I caught on. He didn't really want to go to St. John's, which was the church's church, closest church, you know, it was like 2 blocks away. The old St. Mary's, which was about 5 blocks away. Well, that's historic, and that's where the church started in Philadelphia, and so on and so forth. So we would go down there, and we always walked across this square, and he always stopped to wave. And I thought, you know, he's waving at the flag. He was waving at his girlfriend. And then we walked down, so he could wave at his girlfriend every day, you know. She's now his wife, has been for many years. But anyhow, all those things happened. And I just look back, I don't mean to seem superstitious or anything else, I'm not actually. But I think that if we bring the Lord into our decision making, we'll be making the right decisions. And we'll be making the decisions that he wants us to make if we are open to him. And I believe that as you're thinking about your cooperation and your joining of the organization and how you're going to do it and everything else, I urge you to make the Eucharist the center of your decision making. Visit the Lord and open yourself to him. You don't have to say a word, actually. He'll do all the talking if you let him, unlike me. And so I urge you to do that. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and I hope to see you again. Maybe you'll serve cafe latte this time. we in our rectory, I thought I was going to end this evening. In the rectory, it was very tiny. And in fact, my room, I had to slide in because the door hit the bureau and the bureau and the bed. And then the window was not a window, actually. It was just an opening with shutters in it, tin shutters in it. That was it. And there was no stove or oven. There was a burner, one burner, with the pitcher of oil or whatever it was that fired it. And if you wanted coffee in the morning, we had tinta, that means ink. We had tinta on it, like you have a little pitcher of syrup for your waffles or pancakes or something. We, on the little table, chrome table was there, we had this pitcher of what we referred to as ink, and it was coffee. And you, on the burner, you put milk and lit it and heated the milk, and then you put a little of the tinta in a cup and put it in. And you know, Starbucks comes along and makes a fortune on cafe latte, and I drank it for nothing down there. Anyway, you never know. I don't blame the Lord for that. Anyway, thank you so much for your attention. It's very nice.